and welcome back to Red Studio Talks.
Whoa.
Today we're diving into the fascinating world of generational differences, specifically Gen X millennials and Gen Z.
You know, it's funny how we often lump entire generations together as if they're all the same.
Like every millennial lives for avocado toast.
Exactly.
Can't afford a house because of it.
But of course, it's much more complex than that.
Yeah.
Each generation is shaped by specific historical events, cultural trends, and technological advancements.
Like,
we've got some insights from a psychologist who specializes in social development to guide us through all of it today.
Okay, so let's kick things off with Gen X.
Okay.
You know, the ones who grew up with the rise of personal computers, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and get this, MTV.
They're often called the latchkey generation because many of them came home from school to an empty house with both parents working. Think about the resilience and independence that fosters.
That makes sense. They had to figure things out on their own, adapt to new technologies like, oh, I don't know, dial-up internet.
Right.
No wonder they're known for being resourceful and self-reliant.
You hit the nail on the head.
Thanks.
That adaptability is a key strength.
Yeah.
It's also interesting how some of their perceived weaknesses, like cynicism or skepticism, might actually be a result of navigating such a rapidly changing world.
I can see that. Imagine witnessing all those historical shifts and technological leaps. You might develop a healthy dose of skepticism too.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears to millennials.
Oh, yeah.
They're the true digital natives growing up with the internet and social media as their playground.
Hold on. Before we dive into millennials, can we acknowledge the elephant in the room? This stereotype that they're all entitled snowflakes.
Ah, yes. The infamous participation trophy generation.
Right.
It's crucial to look beyond stereotypes and consider the context. Millennials faced 9/11, the Great Recession, a volatile job market, and skyrocketing student debt.
Yeah, that's true.
These events have undoubtedly shaped their worldview.
So maybe that so-called entitlement is actually a desire for fairness and transparency after witnessing so much economic and social upheaval.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting that millennials are highly collaborative and driven by a strong sense of purpose. You're passionate about making a difference in the world and aren't afraid to challenge the status quo.
They definitely seem more open to things like remote work and flexible schedules.
Right.
They value work-life balance.
Exactly. And their tech savviness is a huge asset in today's world.
Yeah.
They can navigate the digital landscape with ease.
All right. So we've covered Gen X, who witnessed a world transitioning from analog to digital.
Right.
And millennials who were born into the digital age.
Yes.
Now let's talk about Gen Z. What makes them tick?
Gen Z has grown up in a world completely saturated by technology. They're hyper-connected, constantly bombarded with information, and facing challenges like climate change and school shootings as part of their daily reality.
Wow.
It's heavy stuff.
That's a lot to process. I can't even imagine growing up with that level of constant stimulation and global awareness.
It's no wonder they prioritize authenticity and individuality.
Right.
They crave genuine connections and aren't afraid to express themselves in unique ways.
It's fascinating to see how different their priorities are compared to previous generations.
Yeah.
They're also incredibly passionate about social justice and making the world a more inclusive place.
Absolutely. They're digital natives in the truest sense, fluent in the language of the internet and social media.
Wow.
But of course, with every strength comes a potential weakness.
Sure.
Some argue that Gen Z might struggle with face-to-face communication or have difficulty disconnecting from the digital world.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But isn't that where intergenerational learning comes in?
Right.
I mean, each generation can learn from the others, right?
That's precisely the point.
We need to move beyond stereotypes and recognize the unique contributions of each generation.
Yeah.
Gen X with their experience and pragmatism, millennials with their drive for innovation and social change, and Gen Z with their digital fluency and passion for justice.
I see.
They all have something valuable to offer.
It's like we're all pieces of a giant puzzle, and when we fit those pieces together, we get a beautiful and complete picture.
That's a great way to put it.
Oh, hold on a second.
What's that?
Are we falling into the trap of generalizing right now?
You're right.
Yeah.
We need to acknowledge that these are broad generalizations.
Okay.
Individual experiences within each generation can vary widely.
Right.
We can't just put people into neat little boxes based on their birth year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're all individuals at the end of the day.
That's right.
And these generations don't exist in isolation.
Right.
They interact, they collaborate,
Yeah.
they influence each other constantly.
Precisely. It's not a competition.
We're all part of this evolving tapestry of society.
I like that.
And that's why understanding each generation's strengths and challenges is so important.
Yeah.
It's about building a more inclusive and collaborative society where everyone can thrive.
I love this, an inclusive and collaborative society where everyone can thrive.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean for us as individuals and as a society?
It means we need to move beyond stereotypes and appreciate the unique contributions of each generation.
Okay.
Gen X with their experience and pragmatism.
Uh-huh.
Millennials with their drive for innovation and social change.
Right.
And Gen Z with their digital fluency and passion for justice. All of them have something valuable to offer.
It's like we're all on this journey together,
Yeah,
learning from each other and shaping the future.
exactly. Now, to help you, our listeners, understand how these generational dynamics play out in the real world, let's shift our focus to the workplace ready.
You bet. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. Just kidding. We'll be back right after this metaphorical commercial break to delve deeper into generational differences in the workplace. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
All right, we're back. And, I think the workplace is the perfect example of how generational differences can clash or collaborate.
You're absolutely right. Imagine this. You've got a Gen Xer who's all about independent work,
Right.
maybe even a little old school in their communication style.
Okay.
Then you've got a millennial coworker
Yeah.
who thrives on team projects and instant messaging.
And just to spice things up, add a Gen Z intern who's practically fluent in TikTok
Exactly.
and can create a viral marketing campaign before you can say hashtag.
It's a melting pot of perspectives,
Wow.
work style and communication preferences, and sometimes those differences can lead to misunderstandings or frustration.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah,
Like a Gen Xer boss might not understand why their millennial employee needs to take a mental health day
right.
or work from home occasionally.
Yeah.
Or a millennial manager might get impatient with a Gen Z team member who seems glued to their phone.
It's all about bridging those gaps and recognizing that different generations have different needs and expectations.
Okay.
For example, Gen Xers often value clear hierarchies and direct communication,
Right.
while millennials might prefer a more collaborative and flexible work environment.
And Gen Z, they're bringing a whole new set of values to the table, right?
Absolutely. They're all about purpose-driven work,
Okay.
social impact, and a strong sense of work-life balance.
Got it.
They want to feel like their work is making a difference in the world.
It's almost like they're forcing companies to rethink their entire approach to work.
In a way, yes.
Like, no more soul-crushing jobs.
They're demanding transparency, authenticity, and a workplace culture that aligns with their values.
Yeah.
It's a challenge for some companies,
Right.
but it also presents a huge opportunity for innovation and growth.
So how do we actually bridge these generational gaps in the workplace? Do we all need to become fluent in TikTok and start using emojis in our emails?
Well, it wouldn't hurt, but on a more serious note, it starts with open communication
Right.
and a willingness to learn from each other.
Yeah.
Don't just assume you understand someone else's perspective because of their age.
Right.
Take the time to actually listen and ask questions.
That's great advice, and I think it goes beyond just talking.
Yeah.
We need to be mindful of different communication styles.
Yeah.
Like maybe a Gen Xer would prefer a face-to-face meeting, while a millennial might be perfectly happy with a quick video call.
You're right. It's all about adapting our approach to meet people where they are.
Uh,
And remember, it's a two-way street.
right.
Younger generations can learn a lot from the experience and wisdom of their Gen X colleagues.
Totally. It's like a mentorship exchange program.
Exactly.
Everyone wins. Speaking of learning from each other, I've noticed that generational differences also play a huge role in how we consume and share information.
That's a fascinating point. You're right. We can't talk about generations without considering the media landscape they grew up with.
I mean, think about it. Gen X had their MTV, their Walkmans, their landline phones.
Right.
Millennials witnessed the rise of the internet, social media, and smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
And Gen Z, they've never known a world without instant access to information at their fingertips.
It's no surprise that these different experiences have shaped how we process and share information.
Right.
Gen X might be more comfortable with traditional media like newspapers and television,
Yeah.
while millennials are all about online articles and social media feeds.
And then you have Gen Z, who are consuming information in bite-sized chunks through platforms like TikTok and Instagram.
Yes.
It's a whole different ballgame.
It's amazing how quickly things have changed. And it's not just about how we consume information,
Right.
but also how we communicate.
Okay.
Think about the rise of texting, instant messaging, and video calls. These technologies have revolutionized how we interact, but they've also created new challenges.
Like, I know some people who are amazing at texting, but clam up in a face-to-face conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Or others who get overwhelmed by the constant barrage of notifications and emails.
It's important to be aware of these differences and to adapt our communication style accordingly.
Okay.
If you're trying to reach a Gen Z audience, you might need to use humor visuals and short, attention-grabbing messages.
Right.
But if you're communicating with a Gen Xer, a more formal, direct approach might be more effective.
It's like learning a new language, but instead of words, we're deciphering communication styles and digital preferences.
Exactly. And just like learning a new language can broaden your horizons, understanding generational differences can help us communicate more effectively, build stronger relationships, and even collaborate more successfully.
So we've talked about the workplace communication styles and information consumption.
Right.
But what about parenting? Surely generational differences play a role in how we raise our kids.
You're absolutely right. Parenting styles have evolved dramatically over time, and each generation brings its own values and beliefs to the table.
I mean, think about the helicopter parent phenomenon that was often associated with millennials.
Yes.
They were all about protecting their kids, hovering over them, making sure they had every opportunity.
It was a reflection of their own experiences growing up in a world that felt increasingly uncertain and competitive.
Okay.
They wanted to shield their kids from hardship.
But now we're seeing a new trend emerging with Gen Z parents.
Right.
They're being called gentle parents or attachment parents.
They're more focused on empathy, open communication, and building strong emotional bonds with their children.
Interesting.
They're also less likely to use traditional discipline methods and more likely to embrace a collaborative approach to parenting.
It's fascinating how these parenting styles reflect the broader cultural shifts we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Millennials who experienced a lot of structured parenting are now reacting to that by raising their kids with more freedom and autonomy.
And Gen Z, who grew up in a world saturated by technology and social media, are prioritizing emotional intelligence and connection in their parenting.
It's almost like each generation is trying to correct the perceived mistakes of the previous one.
Right.
But of course, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to parenting.
Exactly.
What works for one family might not work for another.
And it's important to remember that every generation has its strengths and weaknesses when it comes to parenting.
Right.
Gen X parents, for example, are often praised for their pragmatism and resilience.
And millennial parents are often lauded for their creativity and open-mindedness.
And Gen Z parents, they're bringing a fresh perspective to parenting, one that emphasizes empathy, authenticity, and a deep connection with their children.
It's exciting to see how these different parenting styles will shape the next generation.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to note that we're not just talking about parents and children here.
Right.
Generational differences can also impact our romantic relationships.
That's a great point. Dating and courtship have evolved dramatically over time, and each generation brings its own baggage and expectations to the table.
Think about it. Gen Xers witnessed the rise of divorce rates and might be more cautious in their approach to love. Millennials who came of age during the era of online dating might be more open to casual relationships and experimenting.
And Gen Z, who are digital natives, might be more comfortable with expressing their feelings virtually and navigating the complexities of online dating.
It's a wild world out there. But regardless of how we meet or connect, I think the fundamental human need for love and connection remains constant.
You're right. It's about finding someone who shares your values, respects your boundaries, and makes you feel loved and supported.
And being open to learning and understanding different perspectives, which is really what this whole conversation has been about, right?
Absolutely. We've talked about generational differences in the workplace communication styles, parenting, and even romantic relationships.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's not about putting people into boxes or making assumptions based on their age.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we're all individuals with their own unique experiences and perspectives.
Right.
And approaching each other with curiosity, empathy, and a willingness to learn.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together.
Nicely said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up part 2 of our exploration of generational differences.
Okay.
But don't worry, we'll be right back for part 3, where we'll delve even deeper into the fascinating world of generational dynamics. Stick around. Welcome back to Red Studio Talks. You know, as we wrap up our exploration of generational differences, It's clear that there's so much more to this topic than just avocado toast and TikTok dances, right?
Absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface of the complex dynamics that exist between Gen X millennials and Gen Z. And while we've highlighted some potential challenges, it's important to remember that these generational differences can also be a source of incredible strength and innovation.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It's easy to get caught up in the stereotypes and the us versus them mentality. But when we shift our focus to collaboration and understanding, that's when the magic really happens.
Exactly. Imagine a workplace where Gen X's experience and pragmatism combine with millennials' tech savviness and Gen Z's passion for social justice.
That sounds like a recipe for success. You'd have the wisdom of the past, the innovation of the present, and the vision for the future all working together.
It's not just about professional settings either. Think about the potential for intergenerational collaboration in our communities, families, and social movements.
I love that idea. Imagine Gen Xers mentoring younger generations, sharing their hard-earned wisdom and life lessons, and millennials, with their digital fluency, could help older generations navigate the ever-evolving world of technology.
And let's not forget Gen Z, with their energy and idealism inspiring all of us to create a more equitable and sustainable world.
It's like a beautiful tapestry woven together by the threads of different generations, each contributing their unique colors and textures.
You know, it's funny because we often talk about generational differences as if they're a new phenomenon. But the truth is, every generation has felt misunderstood or at odds with the one before it.
That's so true. It's like a timeless cycle. The older generation struggles to understand the values and behaviors of the younger generation, and the younger generation feels like their voices aren't being heard.
But here's the thing. We can choose to break that cycle. We can choose to embrace curiosity instead of judgment, empathy, instead of dismissiveness.
It starts with recognizing that we all want the same basic things: to feel loved, respected, and valued, to have a sense of purpose and belonging, to make a meaningful contribution to the world.
You said it. We might have different ways of expressing those needs or different paths for achieving them, but at our core, we're more alike than we are different.
And when we tap into that shared humanity, that's when we can truly bridge the generational divide and unlock our collective potential.
So as we bring our deep dive to a close, I want to leave you with this thought. How can you use your understanding of generational differences to create positive change in your own life and in the world around you?
That's a great question. Maybe it's starting a conversation with someone from a different generation, offering your skills and knowledge to bridge a technological gap, or simply making an effort to listen with an open heart and mind.
Even small actions can have a ripple effect, creating a more harmonious and understanding world for all of us.
Well said. And on that note, we want to thank you for joining us on this fascinating journey through the world of generational differences. We hope you've gained some new insights and perhaps even a renewed sense of appreciation for the unique contributions of each generation.
And remember, this conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to share your thoughts, experiences, and ideas in the comments below. Let's keep the dialogue going.
This has been Red Studio Talks with Linus and Genevieve. Thanks for listening.